Let me know when. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Josh Spiegel, and I'm the moderator this evening. Very excited to have you here. Now, before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I would also like to remind everyone that there is Auslan and closed caption services available. So please just pin those screens to be at the forefront if you need those services. They're there for you. Now, the purpose of this evening is about giving you, the constituents of Maribyrnong and the wider community, the opportunity to ask questions directly to Bill Shorten and other state Labor MPs. Just a few housekeeping things though before we begin. We are recording this session. For those who have been to one of these events before, they're pretty much, it's going to be a very relaxed evening. It's a usual sort of Zoom meeting, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. We encourage you to keep your video on. We found it really does help with setting the tone and making sure that everyone's sort of there and you can feel part of this. There is a chat function. Now, this is really important. The chat function is where you're going to be able to ask your questions. So keep an eye out there. We also encourage you to make some comments, share a bit about yourself, talk with other people. It's a bit of an open forum and it's a good way for you to interact. Everyone is muted. And the admin will unmute you when we're ready to invite you for a question. So you'll be told, ask your questions in the chat and someone will come and invite you to ask that question. Now, there's a little thing here. Zoom has added a feature, and that feature means that you have to give permission when they unmute you. So please look out for that if you've asked a question and you've been invited to participate. That will make things run a little bit more smoothly this evening. We encourage people to use their full names, and if you represent an organisation, also put that name there. To do that, there's 3 dots on the top right-hand corner, and you just need to change it in those settings there. It's fairly easy and simple to do. If you're having any technical issues, there are a team of people here to help, so just ask in the messenger and they'll get back to you. Now, there are a few conversation starters this evening, and I'll just go through what some of them are. Feel free to start asking questions now as well. What does the future of our local community look like? This could include things like property prices, shopping strips, development, local government issues. The next one may be, what are the current restrictions and where to next? Could we go back to tougher restrictions? And number 3, what impact is the current COVID situation having on the economy, local businesses, jobs, and has the government done enough? And what should be done next? Now, I'm going to Bill, how are you going? I'll let you hand over to you now.
Hey, good evening, everybody. And that was Josh, who works on my staff. And thank you to all my staff and others from Essential Media who've organised tonight. I'm joined tonight by 3 of my state colleagues, which is fantastic, who cover the area of the Maribyrnong electorate. Katie Hall in Footscray, Danny Pearson in Essendon, and of course, Ben Caroll in Niddrie. So we've got representatives of the state government here as well, which is really good. I'll keep my remarks very brief. Tonight is new. Obviously, the virus and COVID-19 has encouraged us all to use new technology. But I think that, there's a silver lining out of this crisis, which is that this is a new way of us listening to people and communicating with people easily and hearing views. So for me, this is the start, not a one-off. What I'd like to do and what I hope tonight is to hear your point of view, hear your questions. If you've got a point of view, if you could keep it brief so others can participate, you can always chuck on the end of your point of view, do you agree, Bill? But if we could, let's have a discussion. There'll be less, I'll do less of the talking. I'm really listening. I hope it's been a very difficult couple of months for our frontline medical staff, you know, for our school system, for small business, for our people on the social security safety net, for people who work in everything from travel to tourism. It's been tough. So I'm very keen to hear people's views and start improving the quality of debate. For myself, Labor is determined to get on the front foot, to stand up for working people, and so that's where we want to hear what people have to say about our community. If it's all right, Josh, I might get very brief contributions from the state members, because, you know, they're very connected to their community. So I don't know, over to Katie, then Danny, then Ben.
Thanks for having me, Bill, and it's really lovely to see so many faces out there. I know it's been a really challenging time for everyone. Look, I've been really proud with the way the community has responded in the last few months, and from my perspective, a lot of our normal work goes on. My electorate office keeps functioning as normal. We've had a really exciting announcement last week as part of the stimulus package from the government that there will be $16 million spent on Footscray North Primary School. So that school's going to be rebuilt with extra capacity for 200 students. So that's a bit of exciting news for everyone, but I look forward to hearing from the contributions of everyone in this session.
Thanks, Katie. Look, Bill, thanks for having us along tonight. Look, like Katie, I just want to thank each and every one of you. We've asked so much of this great community over recent weeks. It's been incredibly stressful and it's been incredibly challenging, but we've got through it together. We've got through the first phase of it together. You know, we're confronting a set of circumstances we would not have thought was possible. And many in our community are doing it tough. You know, there are a lot of people who have lost their jobs. There's concerns about the future. There's concerns about mental health. There's concerns about your ability to service your mortgage. These are real challenges that people in our community are experiencing. But by working together, we'll get through this. And like Katie and Bill, I'm really keen to listen to people tonight and understand from your perspective what you're seeing and what you're feeling, because understanding our communities better and having a deeper appreciation for what you're going through makes us better representatives. And so we can be your voice and we can do our job better by listening to your concerns. So it's wonderful to have so many people here tonight again. I thank Bill for allowing us this great opportunity. Very much looking forward to the questions coming. Over to you, Ben.
Oh, is your microphone on? Yeah.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Bill, Katie, and to all the community that have joined us here this evening. This is a great initiative from Bill's office because, as we know, COVID-19, while we're partway through it, and the message is very much going from stay home to stay safe, we don't know how long the pandemic will run for. And I can see people like Dr. John Scully from Eastbrook, who's got a very good health background and may shed some light on it from a health perspective. But the community should be proud. I mean, I'm particularly proud the way, you know, not only state and federal, but Moonee Valley Council have stood up and supported helping hands in our community. Like Katie Hall, I was very proud to get $9 million for Avondale Primary School recently, which is an important rebuild for that school. And I can see David Adamson from Essendon Keilor College Principal. Welcome, David. But the community should be proud. And I've got to say, Victoria should be proud too, because if Victoria was a country all on its own, we'd be the 6th rated country in the world for our levels of testing and confirmation of COVID. So the way the Victorian community has responded to the pandemic, everyone should be very proud. And the resilience and the community attitude of coming together is something we should be proud of. And coming together is what we're doing here this evening. So it's really over to the community. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody. Now, we've already started getting some wonderful questions, and we've got one here from Janine. So I'm hoping we can get Janine on the line and ask her question. Are you there, Janine?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Go
for it.
My concern is around family violence. We're hearing a lot in the media about the escalation of this really concerning situation. Many women who experience family violence are in the workforce, about 70%. They're now working from home. The risk is even greater for many of those women. Do you believe that it's now an employer's responsibility to assist in identifying those that are at risk and helping to provide support for them. Under WorkSafe, it appears that that is the responsibility of the employer to keep every employee safe in their workplace. So that's what I believe should happen, but I'm very interested to hear if that's also your opinion.
Janine, yeah, it's a giant. It is a real problem. I was speaking with the local police, and part of the concern is that they're getting, we hear anecdotally more concern about women are sending in, they're not able to make phone calls because they're perhaps the violent partner is there. So there's a lot more email inquiries. So that's anecdotal. I haven't stacked that up yet, but that sounds right. So I do think that we've all got an obligation not to pull down the blinds and turn up the TV to drown it out. Labor took to the last election paid domestic violence leave. I know some of the Conservatives said, oh, well, that'll get rorted. But the reality is that if you've got to move your kids, if you've got to adjust your finances, if you've got to wait till you get the locksmith, you just need some paid time. We weren't proposing that would be for small business. We get that small business doesn't necessarily have the financial ability to carry that cost. But I do think that it's a community obligation, and I do think that we need our employers to engage with it, of course, bearing in mind their capacities. But maybe the state colleagues, I mean, there's funding for refuges. I know the state's been very active.
Great. Does any of the other MPs have anything to add there?
I'd just like to add, Janine, that there's been some really significant additional funding provided to Women's Health West, who do an enormous amount of work in the western suburbs. We do know that there's been an increase in reports of family violence, but Minister Williams has been great. Has provided some very quick additional resources to support that agency in their important work.
If I can just add to Janine, I'm also the Minister for Victim Support, and I appointed Fiona McCormack as the new Victims of Crime Commissioner purely on that issue you identify with family violence being the #1 law and order issue. As Bill said, it is a community issue, but it is also a gendered issue, and we do need to call it out. I run a Victims of Crime helpline through the Department of Justice, and one of our challenges has been to make sure that it is manned 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. You are right that the calls have gone up. It is a very significant issue, and a lot of leaders in our community, and Airport West in particular, did an important walk to call it out. But we passed an omnibus bill through the state parliament recently to support victims of crime, particularly women. And the Family Violence Minister, Gabrielle Williams, is doing an incredible job. We are increasing our funding to support it, but we're partway through the Royal Commission following the tragedy of Luke Batty. But it's an issue that we've got to be incredibly vigilant about, and to continue fighting on and continue to get the message out there and to call it out, particularly for men, to call out fellow men.
Steve Parnas, we've just read what he said. He's works in our emergency wards. He said they're seeing a dramatically increased presentation. One thing we've got to force the federal government to do, so if you get a chance to lobby the Morrison government, as we will push, more funding for legal aid. If there's no legal representation, then you're in trouble.
All right, thanks guys. That's a great contribution, good question. The next question we have is from Brian. Brian, are you ready in there to answer your question?
Yep, no, I'm good. Thank you very much, Josh. First off, Bill, thank you for putting the night on. I hope the running's going well. My question is around level crossing removals. We've seen a lot of shops closing in the area, Essendon and Moonee Ponds, and that's devastating. And we know we're going to see some sort of economic stimulus to get us going again. There's been a lot of investment from the Andrews State Labor government getting level crossings removed, which is great. Pakenham's seen 17 level crossings removed. Frankston's seen 16. We've seen one. And according to the Moonee Valley City Council, that wasn't done very well, according to the local residents. By 2026, we're going to see the Metro Tunnel come online, and we're going to see a 26 or 27% increase in rail journeys.
Oh.
If we set the level crossings down to 74 minutes, I think it is, in a 2-hour period of peak in Puckle Street, that means that's going to go up to 93 minutes in a 2-hour period. So we know these gates are going to have to go. It's just a matter of when. And given their narrowness and given the rise from Maribyrnong Road, it's going to have to be rail under road. I'm just wondering, could we use the Ormond Bentley McKinnon level crossing removal, which was 3.4 kilometres of rail under road, as a model? And what would be the timeline for removing these, given that it would coincide quite well with promoting economic activity in the local area?
That's to my state brothers and sisters. Danny?
Your microphone's off.
Yeah, no, I'm good. G'day, Brian. Good to see you again. Yes, so there are no plans to remove the Puckle Street or Park Street level crossings at this stage. In relation to your assertion that residents weren't happy about the Buckley Street level crossing being removed, I would have to disagree with you on that. I mean, I think that the last state election was really a referendum, I think, for people to express their views as to whether they thought that it was a good thing to get rid of the Buckley levels crossing or not. And the reality is that the residents overwhelmingly voted in favour of the removal of that level crossing, judged by the results of the election. In relation to your comment about it being going road under, well, no engineering work has been done yet to determine that. So that is not that's not a fact that at this stage because the work hasn't been done. Look, I think one of the challenges we've got down in the southeast, a lot of their railway stations weren't heritage listed because they were built in more recent times in the 20th century. We're really lucky. We've got some beautiful heritage listed stations that were made in the or constructed in the late 19th century. And so, as you would appreciate, when you look at trying to moving a rail line, either putting it below ground or putting it above ground, that comes with it some challenges about what do you do with the heritage listed station. Down at Mentone, they didn't have those issues. The stations were made of wood. In case of Mentone Station, they were able to actually physically lift it up, move it out of the way, repurpose it as part of the new station. That's clearly not the case when you're talking about Moonee Pond Station. So it's a case of no decisions being made yet. There's no allocation made at this point in time, and the work in relation to what you do as a solution has not been done as of this stage.
Great. Thanks, Danny. Now, we're going to move on to another question. This one's a bit different. From Glenn Thompson. Glenn, are you there and ready to go?
Yes, I am. Thanks. My question's in relation to Essendon Airport, the overlay and the master plan. I'm keen to get an insight from the state members within the area of that, and Bill, on what your thoughts are on that and what actions or discussions have been taken place in your office.
Whilst I get Danny to unmute, because he and I have been meeting with Essendon Airport, I think the whole master plan overlay got thrown into, it got frozen because there'd been a lot of work done on it. But then the feds have announced a future third runway at Tullamarine, but that totally changes. But it was in the different direction to that which had been outlined beforehand. So I think Essendon Airport needs to redo its master plan with that new development. We've met with them and they're still working on that. I mean, I think that, Danny?
Sorry, yeah, and just to add to that, Bill, too, I think one of the challenges with the previous master plan was that the airport wanted to look at putting an aircraft environs overlay over large areas of suburbs around Strathmore and Essendon North, and I think Airport West as well. That was their plan, and the council originally let that go through. They were happy for that to occur. Now, I don't have to tell you, if you've got a property and council decide to put an airport environs overlay over your property, you're going to see a significant reduction in the value of your property. It's not going to increase your value, it's going to decrease it. So I think council then, when they realised the error of their ways, they sought to try and walk back from that. But as Bill has outlined, the decision by Melbourne Airport to change its plans for a third runway will impact upon Essendon, because you don't want smaller planes, for example, travelling in a different direction to larger planes, because there's a risk of conflict. So I think that the airport, going back to the drawing board, I think the airport are now trying to engage more closely with the community. And I think that's a really welcome thing, because I think that if they had have been able to, if they hadn't have done that and they had have imposed this airport environs overlay over thousands of properties in our community, it would have been, a really bad outcome.
Thanks, guys. Now, we have another question from Despina. Despina, are you there and able to ask your question? No?
I saw Despina online. She must be just needs to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My question is very, with the complexities of NDIS, I'm concerned about the support of local area coordinators, and they got the contract to be in our area. And what concerns me is some people have tendered for that contract, like the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence, and they don't really know our area. So with COVID-19, it's just added to our stresses, and also how the federal government is tracking the emotional toll it's taking on carers. And I also have to add to that, you have to remember now, adding to the conversation, is the importance of family violence, because these cute little children have become the adults now. So, and the federal government doesn't do a good enough job as the state recognising where we go, or families go, when they have that adult with a disability, and family violence as well. We're getting that support. It's a long question.
Yeah, Despina, you've campaigned in terms of greater support for families who've got a family member with a disability.
Yes, fine.
There are many reasons why I grieve about the last federal election outcome, but not the least of which is the current government administers the NDIS, but they don't get it. During COVID-19, they've only increased support by 10%, and you've got to apply for that. Yet all the day services have closed, so there's a lot more strain on families. The special schools have just only reopened, so this has been pretty hard. And there's a lot of people with disabilities, even not on the NDIS, but on the DSP, for whom they don't recover as easily, and the costs have gone up.
No, school leavers.
So I think the long-term solution is to get rid of the government, the federal government, but the short-term solution is, we're doing whack-a-mole every day in my office. We find an NDIS problem and we persist till it gets fixed. With the local area coordination, I'm aware of some complaints about the Brotherhood. Other people say, though, that they're happy. Again, we've spoken in the past. I'm happy for you to just tell me about the local area coordination issues. What I hadn't realised, having spent time away from the area of disability in the last few years and re-immersing myself, is the NDIS has become a real bureaucracy. And a lot of decisions are made by the NDIS, not with the best interests of the family or the participant, but just for the organisation to protect its backside. So, they spend more time justifying their own decisions than they do worrying about providing the proper support. So what we're doing is just taking up each individual case. We would like, I'll finish on this because the NDIS is a passion of mine too. We want the NDIS to have deadlines. So when you ask them for a decision, they've got to make a decision within a certain time period rather than keeping you waiting for months and weeks and months and years. The other thing is we'd like them to put a lot more of their decisions in writing, because that creates, once it's in black and white, it creates consistency. And then if you get, I've got stories of two people with very similar disabilities getting dramatically different results. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I think we might stay on the social services topic for a moment longer. We have a question here from, now I hope I pronounced this name correctly, Ilk. Are you there and available to ask your question? If not, I might just go straight into the question. Okay. The question is, why did the government close the only Centrelink office in Hobsons Bay without consulting the local community?
The federal government says it has the same number of government service officers now that when it came to power, but that's just not right. They cut out 5,000 staff out of Centrelink, and they have closed a range of offices around Australia. I think they fundamentally don't understand the safety net. They view Centrelink as a commercial transaction between clients and the government, whereas in fact it's there to be a safety net. And we've discovered the importance of Centrelink in the last 2 months, and people who've never dealt with them are now dealing with them. But when you look at the appalling low level of New Start, when you look at the privatisation and the use of contractors, when you look at robo-debt, where the government illegally, in my opinion, issued hundreds of thousands of letters of demand against citizens, and they've been dismantling Centrelink. And the problem is that now, more than ever, we need it. So federal Labor hasn't finalised their policies. It's not the election yet, but I do want to see more staff and more visible presence. Not everyone can use the internet. And so that's why you need a physical presence in our communities. And they just shut the Centrelink office in Hobsons Bay without any warning over Christmas.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Are you there? Because I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I was. I couldn't unmute. So the question was regarding that. Obviously, we're disappointed in Hobson Bay not to have a Centrelink office. And the fact that the local community wasn't consulted is very disappointing, because it is an ageing demographic in Hobson Bay where people basically need some sort of support through Centrelink. And the fact that COVID-19 has basically come across, there's people struggling to understand what to do online and basically on the phones. And I think the biggest challenge that we see, I run a small business, and this is sharing the experience that I had with a customer who turned up to our store, and I could see that something was on his mind. And I asked him how his day was, the fact that he'd lost his job that day. He wasn't disappointed the fact that he'd lost his job. The experience that he had to go through, he was sent by his employer to go to the Centrelink office nearest to him, which was Newport, found the doors was basically closed, was asked then to go to Footscray, joined the huge queue, and once that queue was basically at the end, was told by a staff member of Centrelink, you need to go to Wyndham Vale and then join another queue and basically hand his form in. So when you hear that sort of stuff, it's disappointing. I definitely felt sorry for this gentleman. He wasn't disappointed. He'd lost his job. He knew the company was getting to a point where he needed some support, and basically was told that he no longer had a job.
Well, drives us nuts. And we were complaining about the closure of the Newport office before COVID-19.
But Bill, the timing of that too, the 21st of December leading into Christmas, probably the best timing for them.
All right, we're in agreement, but just to reassure you, we've gone at the government on this, and they were going to shut the Abbotsford office and send everyone to South Melbourne. And the minister, who's a bit hapless, said, they couldn't find, the landlord didn't want them as a tenant. Just say to people, when was the last time you heard a landlord not want a government department as a tenant? Like, it's never happened.
Good question, guys. Thanks. Now, we have another question here related to the times, I suppose. Now, that question is from Warren and Michelle Brewster. Are you guys there to ask your question?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, you're online. Thanks.
People may not be aware that on the 3rd of April, Tiger Air closed the airline offices in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, and that made 220 pilots, probably 1,300 cabin crew, and around about 500 or so office staff redundant. Now, many of these people are from Victoria, In my case, for example, we're finding it very difficult to find work. Centrelink, which we've touched on, because of our redundancy payouts and our salary levels we receive, making us wait 2+ years before we can qualify for any form of benefits. The state governments are fairly proactively working to look after the Virgin employees in terms of getting grants for the office to be in Brisbane, the office to be in Sydney, etc. Is there anything the governments can do to incentivise perhaps a new buyer for Virgin or a new buyer for Tiger or even Rex, given that they're talking about expanding jet operations, to incentivise those companies to employ those ex-Tiger employees?
Warren, I'll invite my state colleagues to comment in a minute. I've been dealing with Tiger Air staff too. And once upon a time, I used to look after ANZET engineers. So it's just like a rerun of a horror film, except in this case, Virgin and Tiger Air have got into trouble, not through poor senior management, but just through this, through the COVID-19 and the closure of flights. Certainly I've been active talking with the unions and potential buyers about, putting them together to be able to talk. I'm disappointed the federal government, they gave money to Rex, but they won't give money to Virgin or Tiger. I think McCormack, he's the Deputy Prime Minister. He's not necessarily a household name. He's the Minister for Transport, including aviation. I know people don't like politics, but he's useless. So I think that we're hoping that one of the state governments works with one of the buyers. I understand there's 3 serious buyers, and they're looking at a full service airline. So I'm hoping that that gets resolution and some clarity in the next 4 weeks. I was out at the airport Monday, with the Donata workers. Donata's the contract catering company, for example, who supplies all the airlines. Because they're owned, there's 5,000 people work for them, because they are owned by a foreign entity, none of the workers are eligible for JobKeeper. So they all have to be sacked, and then they all have to be put on JobSeeker with the problems you identify. So I don't think the government gets, these are good Aussie blue-collar jobs and white-collar jobs. But in the case of Virgin/Tiger, I am hoping that one of the bids materialises, and I'm 50% confident at least that something will come of it. It won't be totally like ANZET.
Excellent. I think the other part of the problem too is that everyone recognises the Virgin issues.
Yeah, but
Tiger seems to have been sort of lost in the fight with everything else going on. So everyone perhaps not even aware that Tiger's gone, or they're even part of Virgin, or they were even made redundant. That seems to have been pushed under the carpet.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I've certainly been talking to Tiger airline staff, but certainly I think they've been put right at the back of the queue in the public debate.
Agreed.
Terrible pressure.
Do any of the state guys have anything to add there?
Yeah, so Warren, you've seen that I had emailed the CEO of Rex to see whether they would have an interest in terms of picking up some of Tiger's former pilots, and I haven't had a response yet. I guess probably on the positives, the fact that Virgin went into voluntary administration early, as opposed to what we saw and what Bill saw with ANZET back in 2001, means that I think that we'll be more likely to see a relaunch of that airline in some form or another in the medium term, would be my guess. Appreciate that might not necessarily translate to a job for you. I guess one of the upsides, I think, for you, because you're a 737 pilot and domestic aviation's more likely to come online sooner rather than international, that's certainly positive as well. But look, I'm certainly mindful that, particularly I think if you look at the State District of Essendon, the State District of Niddrie, the State District of Sunbury, all 3 of our seats have got many members of the airline industry. And so I'm very mindful of making sure that as we start to recover and we start to reopen the economy, that we try and have targeted action to help address those segments of the economy, which are going to need a bit more love and care and attention over the short term. So, I think I've really appreciated the email engagement that you and I have had over recent weeks. I want to keep that continuing, and I want to work with you as you go through this challenging period of your life, because I think by working together and by bringing the power of a government that's focused on these matters, we're more likely to get, you know, the very best outcome for you and your family.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help and all that. Just one final question, more from the federal side of things. Is there a way that we can accelerate the JobKeeper allowance for these affected flight crew and cabin crew?
Yeah, we should. I mean, again, we're the opposition, but why don't you talk to us offline, and again, we'll raise it. And when I say raise it, it's not, we don't write a perfunctory letter and forget about it. Like, we fight for stuff. We raise it, and we'll keep fighting for it. Because that's an industry we should keep in Australia, for goodness sakes.
Great, thanks, guys. I am going to move to Michael Angley next. Are you there, Michael?
Yes.
Go for your question.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Bill. It relates to COVID-19 support, and the entire discussion about whether or not it's extended seems to be around the JobKeeper allowance, with almost no discussion about the job seeker. I think all the predictions are that there'll be many, many more people on the job seeker allowance going forward, and no one's discussing the inadequacy of the standard level of that allowance. And I'm wondering why that is being ignored.
Well, Michael, the media, I don't know, COVID's been so overwhelming that it's been difficult for us to get up each argument in the media. You know, there's sort of, they've got space for a few stories every day. But at the last election, we took a policy saying that we wanted to increase Newstart. I think people have discovered the very fact that when this crisis hit, they doubled job seeker to $550 shows that $264 is inadequate. Now, a lot of people, I think, used to have who had jobs, had a stereotype view of people who are unemployed. Oh, they should just get a job, and, you know, why should we look at $264? But wait till September and the government reduces job seeker to $265 a week. There will be a riot. So obviously we want to get people back into work, but this is the issue of the adequacy of job seeker is going to come booming up the charts in the next couple of months, because not everyone's going to start work again in September. I mean, we're going to have ingrained unemployment. Now, our aim is to get people into work, and we support any practical initiative the government's got. But you are right. That issue is an issue whose time will come. I cannot see how we just go back to the status quo at the end of September.
Thanks, Bill. Do the state guys have anything to add, or I'll move to might move to the next question. Okay, the next question is from Gay Champion. Gay, are you there and ready to ask your question?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Go for it.
My question relates to the plight of the homeless, and COVID-19 has highlighted their plight, I think, although it's been a chronic and long-term problem in our society. Can Labor commit to a much greater investment in social and affordable housing? Such housing is constantly lagging behind the need for it, and has been doing so for many, many years.
The state government can, you know, the reps are all pretty active, so they can speak on that. But from a federal perspective, last year we took a policy to build 250,000 new social housing units over 10 years. The state can't do this all on their own. The federal government needs to support the state with funding, because the federal government gets the bulk of revenue in this nation. I think that there's plenty of reform which we can do, for example, on disability accommodation. I think there's plenty that we can do to help provide some support for the states. I think this will be one of the sweet spots in the debate. I noticed in the chat room, someone said, oh, now that there's a lot of people unemployed, all of a sudden there's a bit more respectability about unemployment. No, I think the timing of this issue, it's not fair what's happened in the past, absolutely, and Labor's campaigned against it. But I think there's an opportunity as the nation comes out of COVID-19 to say, what sort of country do we want to be? I was talking with Brendan Noddle from the Salvation Army, who's been able to accommodate 281 rough sleepers in the city of Melbourne in housing, which couldn't be done before COVID-19. So if we can find accommodation for people in a crisis, why does it take a crisis for us to solve this problem every day? So there's an opportunity for us to have the debate, to win the argument. But again, it's a matter of priorities for governments. And federally, what we've got to try and do is say there's jobs in building social housing. And of course, there's a benefit to human beings in having secure accommodation and also affordable accommodation. But I know Katie and Danny and the others work on housing issues.
I'd be happy to add something there, Bill. Thank you for your question. It's absolutely, public housing is a passion of mine. And when I was first elected, one of the first things I did was work with Bill and Tim Watts and all of the state members in the Western suburbs to bring together all of the different social housing providers and homelessness services to talk about the issues from crisis accommodation through to finding permanent accommodation for people. So obviously we don't have enough stock in the Western suburbs. Was really pleased and proud that last week the government announced $500 million in upgrades for public housing and additional stock as part of the stimulus package. But the other important thing that's happening, of course, is the Mental Health Royal Commission. And we know that the housing first approach where, you know, how could you possibly get your mental health right if you don't have a place to live? And these are discussions that I've had with Minister Foley, and we worked with, as part of that Western Suburbs Working Group, we provided a submission to the Royal Commission calling for more stock in the West. We announced one of our election commitments was 1,000 new dwellings, and I'm really proud that some of the first dwellings that are being built are in Braybrook, along with a lot of the updates that are being provided, new kitchens, bathrooms, refurbishment to some of the high-rise public housing stock. But of course, there's a lot more to be done, but I just want to assure you that the Western Suburbs MPs are working really hard on this.
Thanks, guys. Is anything else from this? Okay, anything else? No. Okay, we've got another question from Lula Peaks. So Paul, now are you there, Paul? Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Can you hear me?
Great. Yeah, go for your question.
I'd like to know why the immigration centre that is in Hampstead Road has been opened up as a facility for allowing ex-prisoners and ex-parolees to be allowed into that actual building without any consultation to the actual local people around that actual place. There are a lot of residents that I know who've specifically said they're very, very concerned with children and everything else that this facility is going to be opened up, and we've got no information about what was going on and the fact that it's going to go ahead without us being consulted.
Ben?
Yeah, Josh, I've, in my capacity as the Minister for Corrections, can I thank Paul for that question. This was a Maribyrnong Immigration Detention Centre, Paul, as you'd be aware, for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
The Commonwealth have decided that they wanted to lease it to the state. And it goes to Gay's question before you, where most prisoners, 50%, are homeless upon release. So we released 10,000 prisoners last year, Paul. Over 5,000 were homeless. So I went through that facility a couple of weeks ago, and I've got to say, the contractors there, everyone has put their shoulder to the wheel to bring this facility up to a standard that everyone can be proud about. Can I go?
Sure, but what guarantees will you have about the security of the residents in the actual area?
Yep.
Because typically most people, and it's sad to say, that a high percentage of these people tend to recommit crime.
So, Paul, one of the reasons they recommit crime is because they don't have a house and a roof over their head. So there will be a full risk assessment. We are intending it to be low-level offenders. It is for a short period during COVID-19 when we are releasing prisoners that are going into homelessness, and we don't want them going to the salvos or committing additional crime. There'll be full wraparound services there, and it will be a facility that will be very much driven with the community. So we, at the moment, Paul, don't have the keys to the facility. It's going through a major upgrade at the moment. But with the Maribyrnong City Council, there will be an established community advisory group, and people like yourself, local residents that have any questions or have any concerns, rest assured that through the community advisory group, that people such as yourself will have an opportunity to be heard, to be listened to. And I'm happy, Paul, to, as a resident, as the minister responsible for the facility, to, get your details offline and make sure that you and your family are certainly kept up to loop on any communications with the facility, and to also answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Ben. Now, just while we're going through this, we're not going to get a chance to get through to everyone's questions. So what we might do there is leave your email if you need some answers, and we'll try and get back to you. Just private message that so that we don't have everyone seeing your email addresses. Now, so I think we're having a bit of issues here. So what I might do, sorry, we were going to go to a question, but that's not going to happen now. Oh, no, we will. Kathy, are you there to ask your question?
Yes. I was actually going to ask a question about homelessness, but it has been asked before. I just thought I might say something about mental health. I work at Farnham Street Neighbourhood Learning Centre, and we've done a lot of work in the community mental health area for nearly 30 years. The thing I find the hardest in the mental health area is the constant tendering out of services. Just when a really good process is happening, lots of services are up and running, there's lots of understanding in the community about what those processes are, who are the organisations that are providing the services, and the next minute those services are tendered out and new players come into the area of service provision, and it's very unsettling for people with mental health issues, and it's very confusing for services like ours to try and work out who to refer people to. I think if you've got good providers, I don't see why they can't be given another contract. But yeah, the tendering out has a terrible impact on those, especially those people suffering with mental health issues. So that's just a comment.
Do you have a question there?
Do we agree? Yes. I think that's a good point. By the way, just for the Farnham Street Community Centre, I think your volunteer grant was successful and we were able to get some funding for you, but not at the scale which I think you're talking about, but that'll be good for the volunteers that do good work there.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bill. We're very happy about that. We'd love you to come down and see the great work that program's been doing over 20 years. It's been a huge effort to try and keep that funded, but we also got the community environment program funding for our wonderful community garden, which we'd like you to come and see too, and we're going to have an autumn festival which we'll get you to launch early next year.
Excellent.
And thanks to Danny too, because he's fantastic.
Thanks, Kathy. Now, the next question is from Teresa. Teresa, are you there and ready to ask your question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're online now.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, my question is about COVID-19 and climate action. So we've been given this position where we've all really slowed down and have been brought really back down to basics in terms of food and shelter. And there's been lots of talk in the media about rebuilding better and rebuilding smarter. I just wanted to ask all the MPs what they thought that might look like in Moonee Valley, especially considering some of the issues that people have raised tonight in terms of unemployment and homelessness. How do we rebuild better with new job opportunities and healthy and resilient communities? I know it's quite a big question. I'm not expecting all the answers in a 5-minute snippet, but just some kind of idea about what our priorities might be would be good.
I'm happy to put a couple of markers down and then...
Did you get that?
Yeah. First of all, I'm visiting a house in Brunswick today where they're using new materials which are aimed at zero emissions households, more energy efficient. I think building standard, so it's Australian made materials, excellent reduction in energy. And what we need is building, they said they're happy to build environmentally friendly houses. We just need building standards which reflect our goal of zero net emissions. That's one observation. Another observation is the way we can have better buildings is to employ local apprentices. That's not just an environmental issue, but the more we can link climate change policies to creating new jobs, I think that would help get people who are otherwise feel there's a choice between the environment or the economy when, in fact, the good climate policies can create jobs. One thing, though, which is interesting and which is a local government issue as much as anything else is the overdevelopment of Moonee Valley. The federal government would like to sell the defence land to the highest bidder. I'm completely opposed to selling the defence land to the highest bidder. I think we've got an opportunity there not to overdevelop, got an opportunity to make sure that we have affordable housing, to make sure that we don't clutter up all the traffic in it's already a car park, Maribyrnong Road most days. So I think that better development policies which are more balanced. I mean, my office is in Moonee Ponds and I don't know, like some of these buildings are so tall, I don't know how on earth they get through the approval system. Anyway, they're just a series of thoughts, and I know that everyone in Moonee Valley's got a view on some of these issues.
I think I'll pick up from there, Bill, too. So, Teresa, I think the other area I think we will also be looking at is as we start to rebuild some of the public housing estates, so removing those terrible walk-up flats from the 1940s and 1950s and replacing them with modern, energy-efficient accommodation. I think that's going to be a really important step. Look, I think what we're experiencing now will profoundly change our society. I mean, I think that for many of us, you know, working from home has had some challenges, particularly if you're trying to homeschool as well. Yeah. But I think the idea that people are going to say, well, look, now that when the crisis is over, I'm just going to go back to work and I'm going to be at the office, hot desking 5 days a week, I don't reckon that's likely to be viable. And so I think that more people will be working home more often. And I think that will reduce our carbon footprint in terms of taking vehicles off roads. I think it will probably also take pressure off our public transport system as well. But I think we've also got to probably also have a more interventionist state and interventionist government. You know, I think in the early 1980s with the recession here, it took about 5 years before the unemployment rate went back to where it was before that recession started. It took 15 years for the unemployment rate to recover after the early 1990s recession. So it goes to the conversation I was having with Warren earlier. I think we'll start to see some real challenges emerge within particular cohorts within our community. And we've got to try and find a way of getting people back to work. And I think that if we can overlay that with a green employment lens, trying to find ways where we can get people back to work in more environmentally sustainable occupations, that's something I think we really need to focus on and we really should try and examine quite closely. Not quite sure what that might look like, but I think that the challenges that COVID has thrown at us will mean that we're going to have to look at this far more closely and be really mindful about what we should be doing as a state government.
Thanks, Danny. Yep, sorry, Bill.
One thing I know Katie and I have been discussing about the defence land is there can't be any development of defence land without some better public transport links into that area. I mean, ultimately, if they want to develop anything in the defence land, we've got to help get public transport into Avondale Heights. I know Ben Caroll's been very active in trying to improve public transport and that helps with jobs. That also helps with environmental sustainability. People have got options other than the car.
We were going to go to one more question, but we're actually out of time. So what I'm going to do, and I'm sorry to that person, but what I'm going to do, I'll probably start with you, Bill, and just get a short comment from each of the MPs to wind up.
I'm interested in how I better hear what people are saying. At the last election nationally, Labor got a majority of votes in Victoria, but we can do better. And I think part of that is dealing with the disillusionment of politics. There's a significant proportion of people who just think the system isn't working for them. So for me, tonight wasn't about too much proletising of one point of view, although I've clearly got strong values. Somehow I want to make this work even better, where we hear ideas. We're not all going to agree on everything, but I want to give people the opportunity to be heard. I've gained a lot of insight. Not every view did I agree with, but it's just really useful to hear what people are thinking. And I'd like to, sure, I want to find out a way of making this a better listening process, but as a first start, I found it intensely interesting and important.
Ben, did you want to say something?
Certainly. Just to thank the community, and I think tonight highlighted just what a caring community we had and continue to have, because when you look at the themes of all the questions tonight and the discussion, it was around family violence, homelessness, mental health, all the themes that aren't always singular to us, but we always know someone that's affected by one of those issues. So it's a great community we live in. It's a privilege and an honour for us all to be representing you, and to hear your questions and your topics of interest just showed what a great caring community we live in. And I just thank you all and look forward to doing this again.
Thanks, Ben. Katie, did you want to make a comment?
Just thank you everyone for participating. I just wanted to say that my door is always open. Email me, call my office if there's ever any issues that you need assistance with, even if it's not within the realms of the state government. Normally we can find someone that can help you out. So please don't be backwards in coming forward.
Thanks, Katie. I think we have one more comment from Bill, but I might just give Danny his opportunity to say something first.
Yeah, great. Look, thanks. I said again, Bill, thanks for arranging this. Look, again, we just have got such a wonderful community. I know just Kate Barletta, the principal at Essendon North Primary School, has been on the line. I just want to give a big shout out to our teachers, our first responders, all the people that have helped get us through this crisis. We are just so blessed. We are so fortunate to live in such a wonderful community. A community that really cares about each other. We've got people who've got really great values in our community. And we're well supported by such fantastic public servants, our first responders that have kept us safe, that has helped us get us through the first part of this crisis. Look, I think it's been great, Bill. It's been fantastic that you and your team have pulled this together. It's a great privilege and pleasure to have been asked to participate. So thanks again.
Listen, one quick thing I wanted to just add is, listen, the teachers in the education system deserve a big tick, and Danny said that for all of us. I would like to do this again. I know what we'll try and do is do quicker answers. I know there's some people interested in state issues, some people interested in federal issues. Someone said about a national ICAC. Labor supports that. Maybe we can work out a rapid fire format where people are just getting bang, bang, bang answers. But can you all give me some thoughts on how we can do this better next time? But thank you very much again.
So Teresa just made a good suggestion. I thought doing it as a theme would be a good idea, like actually picking a theme, whether it's family violence or education or health or transport. I think that's a good idea.
And as the theme goes, on June the 1st, it's Injured Workers Day. So it'd be nice, June the 1st, we still have hundreds of Australians go to work, don't come home safely. So just a shout out for that. And please tell me the things we can talk about. There's so much more to talk about, really.
With that, please leave your comments, because what we're going to do tomorrow is go through everyone's comments. So if you have something to add right now, please jump into your comments there and your messages, and feel free to tell us what you think about tonight, what feedback you have, if you have some questions about things, and we will try and get back to those. We might need you to message us your emails though to do that.
Tell your friends, give us the emails of your friends, tell them what they missed out on.
Absolutely. Well, yep. Now, I'd like to thank all the MPs for partaking tonight. I'd like to thank everyone who's been behind the scenes working on this too, and also to our signers and the closed caption crew and everyone who's been working on this. So thank you very much. And I will actually leave it there. So thank you, team, so much for... Oh, sorry, I've been told... Oh, sorry, ignore that. I am going to leave it there and thank everyone so much for partaking.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Night.